alaikum everybody. Welcome to Youth Perspectives. Today, as usual, we have Azra Mirza, my co-host here, and we have a new little friend with us today. Her name is Nida, and Nida, just to kind of start off our discussion today, do you want to just tell us about yourself?
My name is Nida Fatima. I'm 11 years old and I'm in 5th grade.
Okay, thank you for your introduction, Nida. So today, what we wanted to talk about was one of our very important imams. Of course, all of our imams are important, and the imam we wanted to focus on today is Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. And we will also be talking about a little bit about Imam Zaman alayhi salam. So just to start off, I will just give you some biography about Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. So of course, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, his father was Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam. His mother's name was Bibi Farwa. And the reason, actually, I didn't mention this in the beginning, but the reason we're talking about him today is because a week ago, it was his birthday, and it was on the same day as our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's on the 17th of Rabiul Awwal, and it's actually in 83 AH. So we just decided, since there's so much to talk about, our imams and our prophets, so we couldn't really fit two great personalities as like the focus of the discussion in one sitting. So we decided to talk about the Prophet last week, and now we're going to dedicate most of the session to Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. So continuing on his biography information, he was born in Medina, and he actually passed away when he was 65 years old. So that's just a little bit of information on Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. So now I'm gonna come to Azra, and Azra, do you want to share any story about Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam with us today?
Yes, definitely. There is one story that I found particularly interesting about Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, because the previous imams, Imam Ali, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, we hear about them and how sometimes they wore very, very simple clothing, because just the people of their time, that's how everyone was. People wore very simple clothing. So I heard this one story. I would like to share it with you. One day during Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam's time, there was this one man by the name of Sufyan. And he looked very pious, and I'm sure people thought he was, because he had very simple clothing, and he just looked like a very simple man. And obviously, when you see someone who's very simple, you think, wow, they gave up the worldly life, they're so religious, so close to God. So this pious man, Imam Jafar Sadiq was wearing very nice clothes. So this pious man goes up to Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam and says, why are you putting on such a precious dress if you're from the family of the Prophet? Because I guess there was this misconception that if you're from the Ahlul Bayt, you wear extremely simple clothing. So Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he said that she lifted his shirt, and he showed that underneath he was wearing very simple clothing. And he told the man, he said, the reason I'm wearing these good clothes on the outside is because I don't want people to think that I'm needy or I'm a distressed person. Because at that time, everyone, the standard of living kind of became better, and people just generally wore better clothing. So it would be very odd if the imam went around wearing very bad clothing. People would think he was poor, he was distressed, he was needy, he didn't take care of himself. So the imam said, no, I have to make sure that he holds himself in a certain way. And then the imam pointed out that the pious man, was actually wearing very nice clothes underneath his bad clothes, because the pious man wanted to give the illusion that he was a pious person. So it kind of showed how the pious man was actually not pious at all, and he was being deceitful, while the imam in reality was a simple man, but just to keep up with the times, that he had to maintain a certain level of self-respect and dress a certain way. And this kind of is really great, because we have the misconception as Muslims that we have to be very simple and we have to not care about the way we dress or the way we look. But obviously staying on top of things is very, very important. And we also hear, for example, the Prophet spent a lot of money on perfume. So holding yourself up to some self-respect, to some standards, is important as a Muslim. And if everyone around you is dressing in a certain way, it's obviously okay to dress that way as well, because that's just the normal of society. So I found that story very interesting. And then also, secondly, the next day, that same man, Sufyan, who pretended to be pious, he saw the imam working very, very hard in the fields. and the Imam was like working very hard and he was sweating. And then Sufyan went up to the Imam and he said, I'm very surprised, about you. Why are you so greedy about the world, that you're working so hard and giving up so much so you can benefit from this world? That's what Sufyan told this Imam. So then the Imam said that, how happy would I be if I met the God, if I died in this condition, that I am working hard and getting the expenditure of life by putting myself in inconvenience, and I do not get myself loaded upon others. Because basically what the Imam was trying to say is that it is so important that we are trying to be as independent as we can, and it's not good if we always constantly rely on other people for things. So what the Imam was doing was very important. He was working very hard in the field so he could earn his own living, so he can be an independent person. So these are two lessons I learned from the Imam from these stories. One is to always hold yourself to a certain standard and to have some self-respect for yourself. And just that because you're Muslim, that doesn't mean that you have to not care about the way you dress. Wear clean clothes, wear good clothes. You have to hold yourself to a certain standard. And then obviously, secondly, if you're working hard in this world, that doesn't mean you're greedy. It means that you're working hard to be independent so that you yourself can benefit other people. Because it'll be very bad if you always rely on other people's hard work to get by in life.
Yeah, Azra, the points you brought up are very unique and very interesting, because sometimes we don't think about this stuff. What we continuously, if you hear your parents or anything, we're always being said. I know I've heard this a lot, that you shouldn't have all of this high notch stuff. You should live a simple living. But sometimes what Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam taught us was that, of course, you should live with simplicity. You shouldn't do extra spending or anything. But if you're spending money on something that's actually good for you spiritually, and like Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, the reason he was wearing the good clothes was because everyone tended to wear those clothes. So like Azra mentioned, that if he didn't wear those clothes, people would think he was distressed or poor or needy or something like that. So he just kind of wanted to, everyone else in his environment was like that, so that's just how the society was at that time. So it's not like he was spending extra and doing something like that. So having money and using it for the right purposes is completely okay, even if it's a large amount of money. For example, is like going to college. It costs so much to go to college, but the end result is great. You're getting an education for yourself, you're attaining a degree for yourself that will actually help you in your life later on to attain a job. And generally, learning knowledge is very good for us, as our Imams alayhi salam and our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they teach us that learning is very important. So if you're using your money for something that's good for you and something not extra, our Imam told us that that's perfectly okay, so we should be investing our money in those kind of things. And another point that Azra said was, it's very important to be independent, and it's very important to work hard. And that's actually like a whole other topic, that it's very important to work hard. We can't just expect to pray to God and not work hard for something and expect to get that. So these lessons were taught to us so many years ago. And we should learn from these lessons and inshallah integrate that into our own life. So now I'd like to come back to Nida. We know that Muharram kind of recently ended. So Nida, do you want to tell us about your experience in Muharram?
Yeah, I learned a lot from Muharram. I like to go to the majlises because they teach me new stuff. And things that I remember is that in Muharram, it's like when Muharram is over, that doesn't mean that we just forget about Muharram. That means we still remember what happened in Muharram.
Yeah, that's a very, very beautiful point, that when we go to all of these majalis in Muharram, we go to so many majalis. I'm sure you guys have been to so many, going to the masjid, going to people's houses. And we go and we attend and we listen, but sometimes we don't apply to our own life. So Nida, that was a very beautiful point that you brought up, that whatever we learn, we have to take it beyond Muharram too. Like, not just apply those concepts on ourselves during that time, or sometimes we even think about something, oh yeah, we're going to do this thing, we're going to improve ourselves only in the majlis, and then after we leave the majlis, we don't do anything with that, So we have to kind of keep that attitude and implement the new things that we learn into our daily lives, even after Muharram. So great point, Nida, that you brought up. So now I kind of want to shift back to Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. And I actually wanted to share a story about him, like Azra did. So one story that I really found amazing was, so during his time, there were people who were really confused about like believing in Allah. All of our imams and our prophets, they had to deal with all of these people who just wouldn't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it was the prophets and the imams and Islam's job, and it was their role to spread the message of Islam and to teach the people and guide them to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at that, in Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam's time, there were many people who would question him, and they would ask like ridiculous questions, right, just to like see if they were real. So one of the questions was that one person asked Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam that, do you think God can fit the whole world into an egg? So, listening to this question, it's kind of like an odd question, right? But, people during that time, like I mentioned before, had questions like this. And so Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he replied that, with your eyes, you can see so much. We can see the whole sky, we can see like all our surroundings. And so if with your eyes you can see all of these things, then, actually, let me come back to the story. So let me tell you another story. So, basically, one person, he asked Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam that, how do we know that there's God? We can't see God. And so Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam replied that, he told this person to look at the sun. And so this person, he looked at the sun, and this person said, I can't see the sun, it's too much for my eyes. When we're outside and we're looking at the sun, sometimes it's you can't just stare into the sun like that. Even with sunglasses, it's a bit difficult to do that. So this person, he said he couldn't see, and so Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam asked him that, if you can't see the sun, then how do you expect to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So he gave such a great analogy that allowed this person to understand that we don't have to, if you can't even see one of God's creations, then how do you expect to see God himself? So this was like something that really stood out to me. So now I would like to come back to Azra. So Azra, what is something that you found very interesting about Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam?
Yeah, definitely. This is kind of piggybacking off of what you said, because when I said the story about how Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam was working hard in the farm, and he was working hard, and then Rabab said, for example, in today's time, we have all these like ambitions in life, and sometimes the elders tell us that we shouldn't really care about those things. But I want to say something about Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, which kind of reminds us that our priorities as youth are sometimes very straightforward, especially in today's day and age. So what Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam did was that he laid the foundation of an Islamic university in Medina. So during the times of the previous imams, they were very busy with battle with all these corrupt people, with all these hypocrites, so they weren't allowed to really, they didn't have the privilege or the time or the resources to really spread knowledge to that extent. But what Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam did was, he alhamdulillah had the privilege to do so during his time. So he established I believe the first university that of specifically Islamic knowledge. And guess how many students came to that university? Over 4,000. So over 4,000 students came, because that was the first specific university for Islam. So people from far and wide came to learn, and they learned things like jurisprudence, kalam, like discourse, Islamic learnings, even mathematics and sciences. Because we have this misconception that the imams only, they only cared about Islamic knowledge, and they only taught like hadith and this and that. And that's what the university taught. But at the same time, the university also focused on math and science and art and all these other great things. So over 4,000 students from all of these different countries and cities from far and wide, they came to learn. And then when they gained the knowledge, they went and they spread it out. So during Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam's time, that was truly when the Islamic knowledge spread immensely compared to the imamates of the other imams, because that was the time when the imam had the capability, the resources, the time, and the support system to do so. So I found that was very interesting, because as Muslims, sometimes again, we think, oh, simple life, so maybe should I even go to college? I know some kids who don't go to college, but education is so important, and the imam even shows us this. And not even just regular Islamic education, also other subjects like math and science. So gaining knowledge is not limited to Islam. If you have any questions about other subjects, like, oh, I wonder how why the earth rotates. I wonder what causes the tides. I wonder what this mathematical equation is. If you have any question about any other subject, it's still knowledge. So if you go and seek this knowledge, it's still a blessing because you're learning something new. So don't ever think that blessings are limited to just Islamic things like, oh, I have to learn how to do namaz, how to do this. Yes, do that as well. But if you are interested in other things as well, definitely, go on ahead and learn about those things too, because it will be beneficial to you in this life and the hereafter. So I just found that really interesting and inspirational because Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam taught us that education is important in all subjects.
Yeah, Azra, I also wanted to highlight that point. That's a beautiful point that, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, one of his great things was the education that he gave to the people around him, which allowed this education to spread. And the things that he knew, our imams, Allah has granted them so much knowledge. They don't even have to discover things. They naturally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's like a miracle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave our imams and prophets knowledge that is like beyond what we're able to perceive. So like the things that Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam found out so many thousands of years ago, people are recently found that out recently. And so that's really interesting to us, that he knew these things just like that because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the knowledge. And, he actually thought I could give you some examples of the different things that he actually taught before they were scientifically discovered like by normal people. So the first thing that he did was, there was something called the theory of four elements, but this was actually by Aristotle, who was one of the great philosophers in the past. So Aristotle told the world that, there are four elements, including four elements in our world, and that includes earth, water, and there are two more elements. So, however, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam told the world after hearing this that, Aristotle was wrong because there are not only four elements. Now, like if you've taken chemistry and everything, that Earth itself isn't an element. Within Earth there are different elements, like, the elements on the periodic table and everything. So it was like something Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam knew way thousands of years ago, and then later people were able to discover that. So it's just really a miracle how he knew all these things. And he had very significant students also. Like one of his students was Jabir ibn Hayyan, and this person he was a philosopher, he was an astronomer, he was a pharmacist, a physician. One of his students became all of these things at once, an alchemist, a chemist. So imagine like our imam taught someone who could handle all of these professions at once and had so much knowledge. So imagine we can't even imagine how much knowledge Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam said. And also another thing that Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam taught the world was about the origin of the universe, So he knew about this so many years ago. And right now people are trying to, with science, they're still not able to come to a definitive conclusion on that. But Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam just knew the origin of the universe. So, when we look at these things and, he taught different things, like Azra mentioned, he taught the different sciences. And, his students became very, very intelligent people like Jabir ibn Hayyan. And so, continuing on, I would like to come back to Nida, and I will ask her another question. So, Nida, did you attend any milads recently? How Muharram ended, like, in light of Eid al-Zahra?
Yeah, I attended all of the milads, like, almost all of the milads. And I like to go to milad because, like, they wear traditional dresses, and they have if Mawla is happy, that means that we should be happy.
Yeah, that's actually a very, very beautiful point that you brought up, Nida. That if we know on a milad, our imams, they're happy, right? That was, Eid al-Zahra, just to kind of tell you a little bit about it, it's one of the reasons it's celebrated is that it was the first time Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam smiled after the tragedy of Karbala. And the tragedy of Karbala was so great that it's kind of beyond us to even understand the pain that it caused the family of the Imam. He lost his father, he lost his sister, he lost so much of his family and many of his companions, and it was a really, really tough time for them. But in Eid al-Zahra, it was the first time that he actually smiled after the event, after he was brought Ibn Ziyad's head by Mukhtar. So it's a pretty special for us, because if our Mawla, was happy, then like Nida mentioned, I really like this point, then we should be happy, and that's why we commemorate this and go to milads and dress in beautiful clothing and just kind of create an environment of happiness around us. So that's a beautiful point you brought up, Nida. So now I would like to give a quote from Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. He said, "Love for others what you love for yourself." So this is a very important quote because so an example of this, how we can apply this to our own life, for example, if you're buying a gift for your friend, sometimes we have a tendency to, we want to have the best thing, we'll give them the second best thing, I'm going to take this one and she can take that one. So when we're getting a gift for someone, or if we're going to give something to someone, then, we should give them what we love. So if, you really love this one doll, or if you really love this one jacket or these boots or whatever that you like, then if it's in your capacity, of course, like you don't want to get something that's out of your budget for them just because you would like that, but getting something that's within your capacity, within your budget, getting something that you would like for yourself, for someone to give to you, you should give that to them. You shouldn't think of them as someone below you that I'll give them the second best thing. So Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam taught us that we should, whatever we love for ourselves, we should give that to others. So now, Azra, I would like to come back to you. What is one thing that you would say you learned from Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, we learned so many things, but one more thing that I want to mention is just despite all of this, we have to be very dynamic Muslims. As Muslims, we have to be dynamic people, because Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he emphasized the importance of education. He emphasized the importance of working hard, like the story of the farm. He emphasized also the importance, which is very unique, the importance of being aware of your surroundings, being aware of the time and the society you live in, and then acting accordingly. Here we live in America, and for example, so if we went around dressing in a certain way, obviously within Islamic boundaries, versus how we dress in Iraq, it will be very different. For example, in other countries, if we went around wearing like American clothes, and then that society would consider us to be very, immodest. Because in other countries, for example, they just want women to dress in a certain way. In America, we're accepted with other, ways of dressing as well, because just the society allows that. So we have to kind of keep track of what society demands what from its people, and we have to kind of stay in tune with that too, because as Muslims we don't want to like make a fool of ourselves. We don't want to take away our own self-respect. But the most important thing is, while you're doing this, make sure you're obviously within the boundaries of Islam. So as long as you're following all the right things and you're staying away from sin, you can dress whatever way you want, as long as you observe proper hijab. You can you wear perfume, you can do this, you can do that, you can have a great education, especially in America, because that's emphasized even with non-Muslims. So by all means, definitely go have a great education, excel and learn about all these great things in math, science, medicine, history, art, everything, as on top of Islamic things. And one more quote with Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he said that our intercession will not be extended to the one who is careless in performing prayers. So this is very important, because despite all these things like education, society, things like that, working hard, Islam still at the end of the day is the most important thing for a Muslim. All those other things I mentioned, those are just secondary things. Islam still obviously is the most important thing. And it's very scary, because as Shia we rely so much on the intercession of the Imams. And on the Day of Judgment we say that Imam Hussein, Imam Ali, Prophet Muhammad, they're all going to be there for us. They're going to help us. Maybe Fatima alayhi salam, all these Imams will be there. But we have to be careful, because if we don't give importance to namaz, then their intercession will not be there for us. And namaz, sometimes we overlook the importance of namaz, because it is something that we have to do all the time. So if we have to do something constantly, we kind of lose its value. But just the fact that we have to do namaz so much in itself is like the very reason why we should understand that it is the most important thing, because we hear if our namaz is not accepted, none of our deeds will be accepted. And if our namaz is accepted, then all of our deeds will be accepted. So namaz is very, very important, and that's a whole different session, because namaz is just this very, very long topic. But be careful, because it's so easy to get distracted in namaz. It's so easy to like miss namaz, miss fajr, or not pray on fazilat time. So it's really important. Or even when you are praying, you get it for fajr on fazilat time, you might not be focusing in namaz as much as you want. You know, there's like a joke. If you forget something, go and pray namaz, because that's when you'll remember everything that you forgot. Right? Your mind keeps running the moment you do namaz. So that's very sad. So we have to really build our relationship with our religion and with Allah on top of building our relationship and building our success in this world for our hereafter.
Yeah, Azra, that's a very beautiful point that you made. You know, that first of all, the first point Azra made was that, you know, what in Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam's time, we can see that, you know, what we can learn is that as long as we're following the Islamic laws and Islamic rules, Islamic principles, we can live our lives like, if we want, we can live a happy life. Like, you know how we mentioned earlier that Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he wore nice clothes. He didn't wear clothes that made him look poor, because that's how people in his environment were. So, you know, people would have negative thoughts about him and everything. So, you know, and also how Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he, you know, he spent money separately, a lot of money on perfume, but that was something that actually he needed and that would actually help him. So, you know, it's always great to invest in something, like I gave the example of schooling for college. You know, it's always great to invest in something that will benefit you in the future, and that's correct and allowed Islamically. So that's a very, very important point for us to ponder upon. And Azra also emphasized the importance of praying namaz. And, you know, sometimes we take namaz very lightly. You know, sometimes we're like, in the morning especially, it's really easy to not wake up for namaz and qaza fajr, and then, you know, you should really feel guilty about that, right? But sometimes we're just like, you know, it was in the morning, we didn't wake up. But, you know, it's our responsibility to wake up in the morning, you know, and we can't even depend on other people to wake you up. Say, for example, if you're baligh and, you know, your mom wakes you up every day, and for some reason, God forbid, your mom didn't wake up for fajr and she woke up later, then that's not her fault for not waking you up, because as a baligh person, as like being the right age, you have to, it is your responsibility to fulfill your Islamic duties. So, you know, namaz is something that we really can't take lightly, and, you know, it's something we have to do 5 times a day and never miss it and concentrate in it, because it is one of the most important acts. It is like that number one act that, you know, we need to do every day, because we have to keep a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I know that's a very basic thing that, you know, that's something that's primarily talked about everywhere and something we always hear. But, you know, it's always nice to reinforce these things, because, you know, when we get used to them, we might not realize their importance, and we don't even realize we're not realizing their importance as time goes by. So just to reinforce the importance of namaz, it was really beautiful that you mentioned that, Azra. That was a really great point. So, you know, we really have to take into account all of these things that we're learning from Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, and from all of our other Imams, and of course our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because then we really have to apply them to our lives. So now with that, I would like to come back to Nida. And Nida, would you like to tell us, what are your thoughts about Imam Zaman alayhi salam?
So, Imam Zamana is our hero. So it's like, we cannot see him, but he can always see us. He can, if sometimes like I'm somewhere else, but I don't know if Imam Zamana is with me. He could be watching everyone at one time. And the other thing I want to talk is that Imam Zamana is in Ghaibat. And there are 2 types of Ghaibat. One is Ghaibat Sughra and one is Ghaibat Kubra.
Okay. Thank you so much for telling us that. Those were a very beautiful point that you mentioned, Nida, that, you know, our Imam Zaman alayhi salam, even though it might not appear like it physically to us, but, you know, he may randomly come and he might watch us. The point is that we never know when he's watching us. So, you know, whenever God forbid, if you're thinking about doing something wrong, and you should just think, oh, my Imam is watching me. And when you think that, you know, you yourself will kind of feel that guilt, and then hopefully decide not to do it, because we really have to imagine that our Imam is watching us, because if he's there and he's watching us, and if we're doing something bad, you know, it breaks his heart. It really makes him upset that his Shias are doing things like this. And, you know, that's one of the reasons that he hasn't come yet, because, you know, it's said that Imam Zaman alayhi salam will come when there are different traditions. One of the traditions says when there are 313 people who are true believers, and one tradition says that there are at least 40 people who are true believers. So thinking that there are millions of Shias that are in the world today, I mean, like, you know, we already see that millions go to Karbala. So imagine how many Shias there are in the world. You know, not everyone goes to Karbala or has been to Karbala. So it's something that we really have to look at, that, you know, millions of these Shias are going to Karbala every year, and there still aren't even 40, or okay, even say 313 of them that are true believers. So that's really something we should ponder about and think, you know, how can we improve ourselves to meet the Imam Islam's needs and allow him to come here. So that was a great point that you mentioned, Nida. That makes us more aware that, like, if we know that he might be watching us, then, you know, we want to stay away from sins because we don't want to make our Imam unhappy. That's, as Shias, that's kind of our goal, that we want to reach the level that he is satisfied with us and he can come, inshallah. And that's what we are consistently praying. You know, after every majalis, we pray Dua Imam Zamana, which essentially states that, you know, the purpose of that is to call our Imam to come as soon as possible. But, you know, we cannot expect our Imam to come if we're not trying our hardest and putting our efforts for him to come. So we really have to realize that. So continuing on, so now that we've kind of started talking, we're kind of simultaneously going to talk about Imam Zaman alayhi salam and Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. But now we're going to kind of take a shift and come back to Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. And I would like to share a hadith by him. So another hadith is, the best of wealth is intellect and the worst of poverty is stupidity. So when you look at this is actually a very interesting hadith, because, you know, when we think about wealth nowadays, what's the first thing that comes in our mind? It's money, right? Having a lot of possessions, having the best of things, that would indicate you're wealthy. Like when we look at celebrities, we assume they're wealthy because of all of the things they have, so we call them wealthy. All these billionaires, these people who own companies, doctors, anyone of high level, the CEOs and everyone, we would consider them wealthy. Why? Because they have a lot of money. And that's the definition we tend to use of wealthy. But here our Imam, the very knowledgeable Imam, he is telling us that the best of wealth is intellect. So, you know, all of this money is really, it's not worth anything in our hereafter, right? And intellect is something that will actually benefit us in the hereafter, because as we earn knowledge, you know, we're earning sawab for ourselves, especially if we're earning knowledge about concerning our religious values. So this is actually a very beautiful point. And, you know, he said that the worst of poverty is stupidity. So that kind of tells us that, you know, we should put in our efforts and we should try to acquire as much knowledge as possible. You know, that's why our parents, they encourage us to attain careers that have a lot of knowledge. So that's kind of why, that should be a reason for you to receive a career, because, you know, when you attain a career, you go through college, perhaps you would go through graduate school, and these kind of things, they allow us to earn knowledge, and therefore they allow us to increase our spiritual wealth. And that's actually the real wealth when it comes to looking at the world as in a perspective as a whole, that our real wealth is actually going to be our intellect and how much knowledge that we acquire, because all of this money, it's not going to go with us in the hereafter. You know, you've probably heard this several times, but again, these points have to be reinforced, that these things like money, everything, it's not going to go with us in the hereafter. So that's a pretty important thing to note, that, you know, we really have to, our number one goal, of course, is to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what the Imams and Prophets told us, and to, in addition, acquire, as they told us, to acquire as much knowledge as possible, because it is crucial to do that, as our Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, is telling us to do that. So now, Azra, I'd like to come back to you. Do you want to share, what does Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam mean to you personally?
To me personally, he teaches us that as a Muslim, we don't have any excuse to not excel in both the worldly things and the things of the hereafter. Because oftentimes we think that our worldly success of this world and then our hereafter are two completely separate things. But Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, so beautifully, he tells us through his hadith and he shows us through his actions and his life that both of these things come hand in hand. You can excel in this world and help that can build upon your success in the hereafter. So if you work hard, if you have a very good education, you study hard as a student, you get a good job, you know, have a good education, you take care of like the way you hold yourself, cleanliness, you hold yourself to a certain self-respect, to a certain standard, and then on top of that you also there was one more thing, you dress well, you have a good education, and also you work really hard like with your job, because again, the story of him working in the farm, he was working very, very hard, and then that one man, Sufyan, came and said, why are you like so greedy? So never let people think that you're greedy just because you're working hard in this world, just because you're putting effort for things in this world. Because if you are independent, if you're working hard to earn money for yourself, if you're working hard to get good grades, to gain education, to earn knowledge, which is the most valuable of wealth, then you are actually not only benefiting yourself in this world, but you're benefiting yourself in the hereafter as well. Because how wonderful it is that if you're well educated, you have a good job, you're independent, you don't rely on other people, you're not needy, you're not always like draining other people of their resources, then that'll be really great. It's okay to ask other people for help, but if you always rely on other people, then that's not a good reflection of what a Muslim should be. So if you have good knowledge, good education, good independence, and a good standard of self-respect, then you will have a good life here, and then you'll have a good life in the hereafter as well, because they both come hand in hand. So never think that this world is like a separate entity. They're very much connected.
Yes, so that's a very, very good point that should be reinforced, that this world and the afterlife, they're connected, and we really have to put our efforts in this world through hard work, like Azra has reinforced beautifully, that we really have to put our hard work into this life and live, of course, the best life and spiritually pure life that we can within our Islamic limits. And that's actually a very important point that Azra mentioned. So now I'd like to come back to Nida, and we're going to shift the talk back to Imam Zaman al-Islam. As I said, that we're going to kind of shift between these two Imams to make a beautiful discussion. So Nida mentioned to us the Imam Zaman al-Islam's she mentioned the Ghayabat al-Sughra and the Ghayabat al-Kubra. So do you want to tell us what those are?
Sure. So Ghayabat al-Sughra is a small ghaibat. So that time Imam Zamana had 4 messengers who could meet Imam and deliver him messages from those Shias. And Ghaibat al-Kubra is when Ghaibat al-Kubra started in 329th Hijrah, and it's still like going on. So yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful that you told your definition. So it's very important for us to understand this historical aspect of the Imam Zaman al-Islam's life. Like, what were these ghayabats? And it's beautiful that you defined those for us, Nida. So now, continuing our talk about Imam Zaman al-Islam, I would like to mention that we kind of want to speak about our role for his preparation. Like I mentioned before, he's not coming for us now because there aren't even 40 or there aren't even 313 people that are true believers at this point. So now we kind of want to talk a little bit about what we can do for his coming. So Azra, I'd like to come back to you. Mm-hmm. What do you believe our role is when it comes to preparing for Imam Zaman al-Islam's coming?
Okay, so definitely we have many responsibilities, because if you realize we are the only civilization since the beginning of time, since Prophet Adam all the way to now, we're the only society that is living without an apparent leader. So from the time of Prophet Adam alayhi salam to all the 124,000 prophets, the 12 imams, all of these people, they had that leader apparent, right? So Imam Ali was there, all the prophets were there, and they had open access to their leader. But we are the first society where we don't really have open access to our leader. He is there, he is praying for us, he is helping us, but he's not apparent. So this is a very unique situation we're in, and obviously don't think that this is coincidence, right? Allah purposely decided which people are born of which time. He decides that you are existing in this time for a reason, because you have what it takes to be a good Muslim during this time. You know, and you hear this hadith, like you hear these things that it is said that some scholars do say that the people of this time actually have a stronger faith than some people from the previous times, because they had to rely on like an apparent leader to come and always constantly remind them of good deeds, of observing piety and taqwa. But we in this society, we don't really have that imam to come personally and tell us these things, yet we still hold our faith. We still uphold our faith. So this is just a reminder that we have what it takes to be the followers of the imam, and in his absence we have to constantly uphold the true values of Islam. So as youth specifically, since this is youth perspectives, we have to take advantage of the privileges we have in youth. We're very active, we have all these connections, we're here in America, so the older generation doesn't really have, they don't really know the way around this country, but we know, right? We know the effect, we can use social media for positive things, we have our connections, we interact with non-Muslims more than our parents do. So we have that, we have that social network, and we have the power to really have a greater circle of influence, versus the older generation. So we should use that to actually spread the goodness of Islam through our actions. We don't have to always go around and like preach, become Muslim. Definitely not. We're not trying to convert other people, but just through our actions to show other people that Muslims, that Shias are such wonderful people, with our words, with our actions, with the things we do, the things we say, the way we uphold ourselves, the way we dress. So that's really important. There's also a hadith that you have to take advantage of your youth before your old age, because youth is a blessing that obviously will go away after a while. And for those people in the audience, if you're not a youth anymore, definitely don't worry, it's never too late. You hear even the oldest of the companions of the prophets and imams were still there till the end of their lives, that they supported the cause. So at any age you can support the imam, you can support the cause of the imam. But specifically, if you're a youth right now, please don't let this time slip away, because you can ask any elder and they will say that they wish they had more time to be young, because this is the time which you really have the privilege to do things. So secondly, Rabab did, obviously she mentioned this, and it's well known that we need 313 people, and sometimes they say even if we just had 40 people, the imam would come back. So just to think about, like, there are over 7.5 billion people in the world right now, and like around 22 to 24% of them are Muslim, and then from there a certain percentage are Shia. But if you calculate the amount of Shias in the world today, we have like millions, like hundreds and millions of Shias, and the fact that from those millions and millions of Shias we can't even gather 313 or even 40 people who are ready for the imam is just so sad. So that kind of inspires us to really become a better version of ourselves every single day, and to really work towards that cause. Because if the imam is here sitting there waiting for us to become better people, then how can we live with ourselves if we don't take every possible second of our lives to really help his cause? Because we always say Alajal imam, please, we're waiting for you, but we're not waiting for him, he's waiting for us. The moment we reach that level where he's ready to come, he will. He's been ready for over 1,000 years, and you think the imam is not ready? Any day he can come and save the world, but it's up to us. If he has that support system, that's when he will come. So that's one thing. As youth, always remember that you have a responsibility, because Allah put you in this time for a reason. You are the imam support system. So please remember that it's never too late, and always, every single day, make the correct decisions to become closer to the imam instead of being further away from him.
Yeah, Azra, that was a very beautiful point that you brought up. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He put us in a time frame where we don't have an imam like actively being in front of us, how the imams in the past were, when they directly transmitted the information to the people and spread the message of Islam. But so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He put us in a time frame, in a time period where we don't have this imam like right in front of us directly telling us what to do. So he like Azra mentioned, I really like this point that she brought up, that He put us in this place for a reason, because He knows that we have the potential to follow the Islamic guidelines, to be good Muslims without an imam directly telling us what's right and wrong, because He knows that we can acquire the necessary knowledge. And alhamdulillah, a lot of us, like when we come to majalis, we know all of these things. We don't need some we already know these things because the Imams, they brought this knowledge and it spread so much and it's written in books and everything. God knew that all of this would happen, that technology would advance. You don't even have to, if you want to learn about Islam, you don't even have to look in books anymore. I mean, there's books, first of all, available to you. And in addition to that, you have the internet. So you have God has given us so many resources. And like Azra mentioned, like we have social media nowadays. Like we can, ultimately, social media, okay, there's an aspect of it that, you waste time on it, just liking pictures and stuff like that. But then there's another aspect where we can use it to propagate positive things, perhaps propagate different events like protests and things like that, and use it in any unique, creative way that you can to propagate Islam. So, that social media is something you can spread to people in minutes, and like 10 people can see your stuff in like a minute. So it's really, really easy for people to learn about what you have said on social media really fast, because now we're in a generation where that's allowed. So in the end, God, he put us in this time period for a reason, because he knew we would have the resources, he knew that we would have the capacity, he knew that we would have the potential to learn and the Islamic guidelines and to live as good Muslims. And alhamdulillah, there are people who are really, really true believers. And sometimes we may think we're a true believer, but that's where we have to come in and see and evaluate ourselves. Where do we need working? Because none of us, of course, is perfect. Only our Imams are perfect, right? So everyone has some sort of flaw that they may not identify in themselves. Me, you, everyone, they have a flaw because no one's perfect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only made the Imams and the Prophet ﷺ perfect. So knowing that, we really have to realize that we have the power to spread Islam from ourselves through our knowledge. And an example of that would be, for example, in front of your, like Azra, something else Azra mentioned was that, we as youth, we interact more with non-Muslims than our parents do. So, something good that you can do that to spread the message of Islam is maybe perhaps be really, really kind to them. Show them your kindness. Show them the good aspect of Islam. Perhaps, on Eid you want to go to their doors and you can give them like a present. I'm just giving an example of something you can do. But, something that'll help them realize that Islam is such a good religion. These people are so generous. They come door to door to give you something. Or, simply holding a door for someone, or something that's really simple that just shows them, like when they see the hijab on you or they recognize from you, like from your name or anything, that you're a Muslim, they realize how good the religion of Islam is. So we really need to, through our actions, actions speak louder than words. We really have to, through our actions, through social media, through all the resources that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided us, has blessed us with, we should use that to our advantage to spread the message of Islam and just give it a positive image. Because we know that in the news, in the media, there are horrible messages and negative messages of Islam being spread. It gives it it gives it a bad reputation. It's literally the opposite of what they show on the media. So we have to try to counteract that. We have to try to go against that and have people believe, especially like people who are non-Muslims who really don't understand Islam and everything, what Islam is really like. And that would be through our actions, through our words, through using the resources that we have available to us. Now, before, I kind of blanked out on a story. I don't know, I was starting to tell a story and I just kind of blanked out, so I would like to continue that story. So this was in Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam's time, that there was a person who asked them, people during that time were questioning God, and so this person asked him, can God fit the whole entire world into an egg? So this question, may seem like an odd question to us, but Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he straightforwardly gave this person a response, and he said, if with your eyes, that if you can see all around you, if we actually look at ourselves, like with our eyes, we can see such a wide perspective of things, right? So he said, if you can solely with your eyes see if God can fit the entire perspective, the world, you can see the sun, you can see the stars, you can see so many things from top to bottom, you can see with your eyes. If God can fit this ability of vision, this can fit like this world, the perspective of the world into your eyes, why can't he put the universe or the world into an egg? So, he gave these analogies, and these really helped people to understand that, even though they don't see God or, asking these such questions, they really understand that God is real. There has to be a creator. So through these analogies, people were able to understand, because, how else can you explain to people? You can't really explain it very well, but Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam and the Imams did a great way of convincing people and allowing them to understand that God is there. So just I wanted to cover that story because I kind of blanked out earlier, so just got that over through. So now we're kind of reaching the end of our program, and just to kind of conclude the program, I would like to give one last hadith of Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. He said that our intercession cannot reach a person who takes his or her salat lightly. Now this Azra actually mentioned, we didn't plan this at all, but she emphasized the importance of salat a lot. So this kind of it connects directly with that. It shows us that salat is so important, and it just allows us to understand how that we cannot take it lightly, that it is something very serious. And it's really easy for us to, over time, that we keep doing it. We don't give importance to it. We're doing it so late when we get home. We should actually try to do it on time. Like, I know people in my university that, even though they can go home and do namaz, and it's like Shia people, they do namaz on time at university. And I was really surprised because that's just so amazing. Like, you're taking time between your classes. Usually people, would study or play around or anything, but these people go to do namaz in that time. So that really amazed me, and that really opened my eyes. So, some people, when they think they're coming home late, they just qaza their namaz or something like that. So we have to really give importance to trying to do namaz on time. So just to conclude with our topic today, we learned several things. We had a great guest today, Nida, and of course Azra. She's always great. And we were able to learn, I hope you all were able to learn something new from our discussion. And even if you didn't learn anything new, at least I hope we were able to reinforce some things that you should already know, just so you understand the importance of these things. So, today we just some takeaways for the day, that we really, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, his birthday was last week on 17th Rabiul Awwal. It's always important to, know these are Imams and Prophets alayhi salam. We should know their days of birth. It's a great thing if we know that. So that was last week, about a week ago. So we should know that date. And then we should know that he was such an intelligent personality. He was an educator. The people he educated, like Jabir ibn Hayyan, he was so many professions at once. Like I mentioned before, he was a pharmacist, an alchemist, a chemist, an astronomer, a physician. Like, we can't imagine even doing one of those jobs without getting tired now. But he was educated by Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. So from this we can see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala naturally gave Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam so much knowledge. Another takeaway that we can learn is that, we should work hard in this world, because Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam encouraged that, and be independent. And we also learned lastly about Imam Zaman alayhi salam. We learned about his different ghaibat from Nida here. Great information she provided. And Azra gave some great points about what our role is for his coming, and how, God put us in this this time period for a reason, because he knows we have the ability to be Islamic, like to follow the rules of Islam without someone directly guiding us there. So we have a job, and we should take that role and do whatever we have, all the resources Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to reach the goal of spreading the message of Islam, and of course first following it ourselves before we spread the message, of course. So I hope you all learned something today, and we'll see you next week on Youth Perspectives. Thank you.